Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, we have a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's talk about some Impact Wrestling news. And you can see it on the screen there. Two Impact Wrestling stars have indeed announced their engagement. A bit of an interesting story. We don't always talk about, the personal and private lives of professional wrestlers. I'm always really hesitant to do so. I like to talk about the storylines, the creative, the behind-the-scenes information, not too much about its personal lives, but when it's posted on social media, I suppose we can talk about it, especially it's all about the world of Impact Wrestling, here in this video. We do a ton of Impact Wrestling content here on the channel, and as you can see there, Impact Wrestling stars Jessica Havoc and Sami Callihan got engaged yesterday. Havoc posted a photo of the two together with the following caption. She posted, quote, "So I've just ended a live stream of the Mothman statue at the Mothman Museum just to have Sami on one knee when I turned around. I almost couldn't believe it. I'm so overwhelmed with happiness. I didn't know how to react, so I started crying. LOL. Tears of joy. I don't know what to say. P.S. I said yes." Now, yes, there was also Havoc's birthday, so obviously, Sami Callihan proposed on her birthday, and obviously, a huge congratulations, first of all, to the happy couple. Excellent news. I didn't even know that they were together. I didn't even know they were a real-life pairing. But Sami Callihan and Havoc getting engaged. So excellent news. With stuff like this, there's not a lot really of analysis to break down, is there? It's just the right response in any of these kind of things is just to pass off, incredible congratulations. So very exciting. They haven't said or talked about dates or anything like that, but very exciting news. And obviously everyone at Wrestling News 365, myself, sends congratulations and sends the best to the happy couple. Of course, Sami Callihan is scheduled to face the Impact World Champion Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary on July 17. So we might be looking at a real great couple of months for Sami Callihan. Not only does he get reinstated after being fired, he also gets engaged to Jessica Havoc, and on top of that, he might be the Impact World Champion by July. So certainly exciting times for Sami Callihan. But obviously, huge congratulations to both Havoc and Sami Callihan. Now, let's switch tracks here and talk about Moose. And of course, Moose is going to be facing Chris Sabin at Slammiversary. That was announced this past week when Chris Sabin returned to Impact Wrestling after being off of television for about 4 or 5 weeks since Impact Under Siege, where Moose defeated Chris Sabin to become the #1 contender for the Impact World Championship. Now, Impact Wrestling star Moose recently sent a strongly worded message to his Slammiversary opponent Chris Sabin. Now, as I mentioned, Sabin returned this past week on Impact Wrestling by laying down the former TNA World Heavyweight Champion with a missile dropkick and a chair shot. The former X Division Champion was away, as I mentioned, for more than a month. Now, soon after the attack, Chris Sabin issued the challenge, and the match was officially confirmed to go down at Slammiversary 2021. Now, taken to Twitter, Moose shared an interesting anecdote from his formative years. This was quite bizarre, to be honest, but he recalled, and again, this is it's a bit of a slow news day, but he recalled that when he received a samurai blade at the age of 16, he ended up cutting his thighs with it. Moose further explained that the moral of this story was that Sabin should be careful about what he asks for. I think this was one of those things that you tweet and you want to sound like really deep and really sort of, oh, this guy's, he's very wise. He's wise beyond his years. But it just sounded a bit weird, to be honest. He tweeted, quote, "At 16, I asked my mother for a samurai blade. First time getting my hands on it, I cut my thigh and I was rushed to the hospital. Moral of the story, be careful what you ask for, Chris Sabin." So, moral of the story, yeah, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you ask for. Moral of the story as well, don't have a sword. Maybe don't ask for a sword. If you're Moose, certainly don't ask for a sword. Be careful, I suppose. Right? Those samurai swords, especially those ones, they're sharp. They're dangerous. When you see those movies, and you see like a flicker, and you go, oh, did they move? And then suddenly they just fall in half. You could watch videos of fruit being cut in half with samurai swords for days. So if you're Moose, be careful, right? Be very careful. And maybe his moral is right there. Now, Sabin last appeared at Impact Under Siege, where he participated in that 6-way clash to determine the #1 contender for the Impact World Championship. Moose won that match, brutalized Chris Sabin by repeatedly attacking his knee, which, of course, has been surgically repaired on a couple of occasions. effectively removing him from the equation for a couple of weeks. Now, after winning the aforementioned six-way clash, Moose challenged Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship at Against All Odds just a couple of weekends ago. Now, the match was steeped in controversy. Of course, it took place at AEW's home turf, Daily's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. The end of the match saw the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, interfere and provide timely assistance for their elite stablemates, the Impact and AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. Now, their assault on Moose was cut short when Sami Callihan showed up at Daily's Place, only to be fired by Don Callis, but he's since been reinstated. So I still think, and again, I might totally be wrong by this. I know I've said this time and time again, and at this point, we should probably just accept that Moose is going to be facing Chris Sabin at Slammiversary. I know that this is almost a bit of a controversial opinion. You can let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. I know you guys will, because you're great at interacting here on the channel, especially for these Impact videos. I still do think, and I truly do believe this, I still do think we can see a situation where it's Moose and Chris Sabin teaming up as a tag team to face the Young Bucks. I know if you watched the segment last week on Impact Wrestling, you would say, well, there is no way. I mean, Chris Sabin seemed pretty fired up when he was attacking Moose. I mean, he smashed him in the head with a steel chair. I think he even used his shoe as a weapon on Moose. Again, my issue is with this, and it's no disrespect at all to Chris Sabin, and it's really not meant that way. It's just that, Moose, for me, I was seeing Moose as the guy to defeat Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship. I was seeing Moose as the guy that was going to be, again, the one to beat Kenny Omega. I've said this before, that given the star that Kenny Omega is, this whole working relationship with Impact Wrestling has all been about exposure for Impact. Dave Penzer spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. He said, it's all about exposure, Access TV. Obviously, it's a limited cable network. Not a lot of people have it. Not a lot of people watch Impact Wrestling because of that. Some people aren't even aware that we're still around, all that kind of stuff. Kenny Omega being the world champion, one of the best pro wrestlers in the world today, even just carrying around the bouts on AEW Dynamite on Wednesday nights or Friday nights in recent weeks. That's good exposure for us. That reminds people that Impact Wrestling are there. That reminds people to watch Impact Wrestling. That makes people watch the pay-per-views that Kenny Omega competes in. It's good business for us. I agree with that. I do agree with that when it comes to Dave Penzer. But the other thing that I've said before is the guy that eventually defeats Kenny Omega, the guy that eventually finally brings the Impact World Championship back to Impact Wrestling, brings that championship home, that elevates that star. That elevates that name. Now, is that name going to be Sami Callihan? I just don't know if that's the right guy for that spot. Moose has just re-signed with Impact Wrestling. He is with the company for 2 more years, significantly more money than he was on before. He's one of Impact's biggest stars at this point. The improvements that he's made over the past 12 months have been incredible. I mean, even longer than the past 12 months, but certainly that whole reign as being the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Physically, he's in the shape of his life right now. He's having the best matches he's ever had inside of a pro wrestling ring. Maybe there does need to be some work on the promos still. That will come over time. But certainly, Moose right now has been doing his best work. The past 12 months have been the best 12 months of Moose's career in terms of work inside the ring, physically, even on the mic, everything. Moose is the guy. If it's not Kenny Omega, if you're going to say on that Impact Wrestling roster, an Impact Wrestling talent that is signed to Impact Wrestling, that isn't an outside talent from an AEW or New Japan Pro Wrestling or whatever, who is the guy on that roster right now? The answer is Moose. And given the fact that Impact Wrestling were able to re-sign Moose to a contract, which I didn't think they would be able to do, the reason that they put their hand in their pocket and they re-signed him to a multi-year deal on a lucrative amount of money, I thought, right, there's no doubt in my mind Moose is going to be the guy to defeat Kenny Omega. He's going to be the guy that eventually is going to pin Kenny Omega, and by pinning Kenny Omega, which people aren't even doing in AEW right now, let alone in Impact Wrestling, by pinning Kenny Omega, he's going to be elevated to the next level. He's never been the Impact World Champion before. It makes total sense for him to win his first Impact World Championship against one of the best wrestlers in the world. That's what this whole working relationship has been for, to eventually not only get exposure, but also put over a star in Impact Wrestling, get them to a new level, and build the company around that talent for the next 2 years or however long left they've got on their contract. I think that all makes sense. Now, granted, I think when they set up the Moose Kenny Omega match for Against All Odds, there might have been still a bit of discussion whether Moose was going to stay with Impact. There still would have been a discussion of, is he going to resign? Isn't he going to resign? What's the situation on his contract? There was interest from a WWE, from an AEW. There was interest from outside parties. There was a lot of discussion, feeling that, he has improved so much and physically he has transformed, and he does have friends in WWE and he does have friends in AEW. They're going to put in good words for him. He's got an NFL background, which WWE loves. All of that kind of stuff. I felt he wasn't going to stay. I thought WWE would try and snap him up. Impact were able to make him stay, and I thought, right, guaranteed he'll be the guy to beat Kenny Omega. But again, I don't think they knew that at the time, so they went with that for against all odds. The issue now is Kenny Omega's beat Moose. And yes, we did have a lot of interference. There was a lot of bows and whistles. There was about 3 super kicks from the Young Bucks, a BTE trigger, and a one-winged angel. Moose was incredibly heavily protected in the finish of that match. There's no doubt about that. They protected Moose as much as they can by having him put over Kenny Omega. But at the end of the day, he still did lose. He has to go to the back of the line now. And I just don't know, as I mentioned before, I just don't know if the guy to finally beat Kenny Omega should be Sami Callihan. And I said before that I didn't think Kenny Omega would drop the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary. And to be honest, I still don't. I'll be honest with you, I still don't. And the reason I say that is, yes, I know that Kenny Omega is really beat up at the moment. He's really banged up. He's dealing with a lot of injuries. Every time he has a match, you can see all of the tape on his arm or the suction cup stuff on his back. He's got I think something like a bruised tailbone, and he's got a torn labrum that he has to rehab and all this kind of stuff. He's really hurting. But I don't see him dropping the Impact World Championship before he drops the AEW World Championship. That's always been my feeling of this. And he isn't dropping the AEW World Championship, I think, until All Out. I don't think he's dropping that AEW World Championship until All Out. That's in September. So by that kind of logic, the next month after September is October. That's Bound for Glory season. That's Impact Wrestling's biggest show of the year. That's their WrestleMania. That's their Starrcade. In reality, Slammiversary this year, as it was last year, is going to be the biggest event of the year for Impact Wrestling, it looks like. Nevertheless, maybe they do Moose versus Omega 2 at that event. Maybe that's the time that Moose wins the first Impact World Championship of his career. Maybe that's the time that Moose is elevated and he is solidified as the guy. Maybe that's the time, and maybe that's why they've decided to do Sami Callihan versus Kenny Omega, because Omega's going to retain. Again, I just don't see, and this isn't a disrespect to Sami Callihan, we started off the video talking about his engagement. I just don't think that's the right spot for him. Sami Callihan. I know that he's an Impact guy, and I know that Sami Callihan isn't going anywhere. He's not going to ever go back to WWE. I don't think he's going to go to AEW or all that kind of stuff. I just don't see it. I just don't see that. So I do feel like this Chris Sabin, I know this is a very long-winded point here, but I do feel like this Chris Sabin match, it just doesn't, I look at what Moose has been doing for the last 18 months or so, and I look at this and I go, is this really a Slammiversary level match? Because I don't know if it is. This match is indistinguishable of a match you would see at any other Impact Plus event, whether it's Under Siege, Turning Point, Sacrifice, whatever. You could see that any other time of the year. This doesn't feel like a match that I go, man, that's a Slammiversary match. A match that does feel like a Slammiversary match is Moose versus Chris Sabin. Moose and Chris Sabin versus Young Bucks. I don't feel that's a Slammiversary match. It was a long night last night with the watch along and the post show. Moose and Chris Sabin versus the Young Bucks. That does feel like a Slammiversary match. That does feel like a Slammiversary match to me. And I still think that's a possibility. Again, the Young Bucks cost Moose at Against All Odds. The Young Bucks have history with Chris Sabin and the Motor City Machine Guns. When they were Generation Me in Impact Wrestling, arguably they had the greatest match of their Impact Wrestling run against the Motor City Machine Guns. Now, that's not possible at the moment because of Alex Shelley. Alex Shelley is away from Impact. He can't compete because he doesn't have a contract with the company, but also he's a frontline care worker. They changed their policy in terms of vaccination and working outside events and all that kind of stuff. Given that more and more people are being vaccinated, maybe Alex Shelley comes back soon. But ultimately, I think the bigger match here is to be the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I think it's going to be a situation where, we'll have Moose and Sabin going up against the Young Bucks. I really do hope that happens. That's a Slammiversary match to me. Not Moose versus Chris Sabin, because I feel like they could do that any other time of the year. But time will only tell if that's the plan. It might not be. Some interesting news about the IIconics. Now, I've put this in the Impact Wrestling video because I'm still going with the assumption that the IIconics are going to sign with Impact Wrestling. I know a lot of people think, no, they're going to AEW or they're going here, they're going there. I still think the IIconics sign with Impact Wrestling. I think that given Impact Wrestling does have the Knockouts Tag Team Championship, given that they do have the Knockouts Tag Team division, I think all of that lends itself perfectly to the IIconics. They've said their intention is to be a tag team going forward. Their intention is to stick together as a tag team. Now, they could go to AEW, but what are they going to do there? Are they going to go after the Women's Championship in singles competition? No, there aren't any other female tag teams really going on right now. You could say, well, yeah, Britt Baker, Rebel, and Vicky Guerrero and Nyla Rose this week coming up on Dynamite. But realistically, the stronger Knockouts tag team division is in Impact Wrestling. The stronger women's division in general is the Knockouts division in Impact Wrestling. So for me, that's the best destination for them. Now, I know people will say, well, Peyton Royce and Shawn Spears, the connection there. That's true. That doesn't always work that way, though. And I think the better move for them is to go to Impact Wrestling. So I still think that they will go there. And we might have some information if they do go to Impact Wrestling, what name they will be going by. Because former WWE stars Peyton Royce, of course, Cassie Lee, and Billie Kay, Jessica McKay, have filed to trademark the Inspiration with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Now, the Inspiration is spelled the same way as the IIconics was. Obviously, the IIconics was spelled with 2 I's, and the Inspiration in the same vein is spelled with 2 I's as well. Now, the trademark is for both merchandise and entertainment services. So, should the IIconics come into Impact Wrestling, they will be going by the Inspiration, which I think is a pretty good name. I think your post WWE name is always so interesting. I thought the IIconics was actually a really good name for them in WWE, which is rare considering WWE's history of having names is not good. Doudrop for Piper Niven. Oh, I mean, it hasn't been confirmed, but WWE have trademarked that. So Doudrop is going to be the case for Piper Niven. Stupid. But the Inspiration, I like it. And like I said before, I really do think that they'll be coming into Impact Wrestling. I think that's the best place for them. And hopefully, in the same vein that I would love to see, because they did this last year with the Good Brothers. The Good Brothers, the announcement was made about the Good Brothers signing with Impact Wrestling pretty much at midnight. It'd been rumored for a couple of days prior. I think it was Gary Cassidy first broke that story. But the Good Brothers, their announcement of their signing with Impact Wrestling was made literally midnight struck, and then the announcement was made by Impact Wrestling that the Good Brothers had been signed to the company. I would love to see them do the exact same thing, but with the IIconics this year. So midnight strikes, and last year you had one of the biggest free agent male tag teams announcement that they had signed with Impact Wrestling. A year later, they do the exact same tweet, but instead of the Good Brothers, instead of a male tag team, it's a female tag team. It's the Inspiration, the former IIconics. I think that would be fantastic, and I really do think that should be the destination for them. I think they'll thrive in that Knockouts tag team division. I think they'll thrive in the Knockouts division in general, and it could be a lot of fun, and they could do stuff, obviously, with Tenille Dashwood as well. There's so much possibility, and there's so many different characters for them to work with in Impact Wrestling, so I think that's absolutely the right place, especially considering that fans are going to be returning as well. Slammiversary, and hopefully with Impact Wrestling going forward. So it's a perfect time for them to come into Impact Wrestling right now. Matt Cardona, GCW superstar Matt Cardona, has requested with the firing of Don Callis that Don Callis has been to be replaced by Impact Wrestling star Heath. Now, of course, Heath has appeared for Impact Wrestling on many occasions in 2020. He was officially hired by the promotion after failing numerous times. Now, given that Don Callis was fired by Anthem representative Tommy Dreamer on a past episode of Impact Wrestling, he has tweeted Matt Cardona that Heath should be hired in this position. He said, quote, on Twitter, "Can we hire Heath? Hashtag Heath for Impact EVP." Now, of course, Heath's last appearance for Impact Wrestling was at Bound for Glory in 2020. He was supposed to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match. However, just after being in the match for maybe like 20 seconds, he suffered an injury which forced him out of the match, and the company on the fly had to alter the ending with Rhino winning. As per the stipulation, because Rhino won, Heath got offered an Impact Wrestling contract, and Rhino won the Call Your Shot Gauntlet trophy, which he later cashed in for Violent by Design to win the Impact Tag Team Championships, because since Heath's been away from Impact Wrestling since November, after Violent by Design attacked him backstage, he's currently recuperating after undergoing surgery on a sports hernia on March 1st. Now, you would think, why did it take so long for Heath to have surgery? He suffered the injury in October, and he had surgery on March 1st. Now, the reason why it took him so long to get the surgery is he struggled to find a surgeon. He struggled to find a surgeon that was willing to do what was a very extensive surgery on Heath. He was essentially having 3 surgeries at once to fix all of the problems in there with his hernia and all this kind of stuff. So it took him a while, which delayed his return to the ring. Now, we don't know if and when Heath is going to come back. I mean, he is going to come back. We just don't know the time frame. I think it was previously reported that maybe the autumn was the period of time maybe to expect Heath coming back. And maybe they're saving it at this point where they're saying, well, maybe we should save it and have Heath return so he can confront Violent by Design, I wouldn't be against it. I'll be honest here. I wouldn't totally be against Heath coming back to do promos where he's, the comedic EVP replacement for Don Callis. I think that could be interesting, especially given what rulings he could do with Violent by Design and Rhino. If you want to get Heath back on the program, if you want to get a bit of name recognition back on the program, if you want to get a bit of comedy on the program, Heath might not be the worst thing for that. And it would familiarize the audience once again with Heath eventually when he returns to in-ring action. Obviously, again, we know the Impact Wrestling TV taping schedule. It's only a couple of days a month. He could certainly fly in, do that, and then go back to doing his rehab. So I wouldn't, it's tongue-in-cheek by Matt Cardona when he's talking about that, but it would be interesting. It really would be interesting. Now, obviously, Matt Cardona as well. He had a recent appearance in GCW where he impersonated Jon Moxley and attacked Nick Gage. That earned widespread acclaim from fans. It definitely reminded me of Jim Cornette or Jerry Lawler showing up in the ECW arena in the late 1990s. Well, of course, Cardona is scheduled to face Gage for the GCW World Championship at GCW Homecoming on Saturday, July 24. I'm very excited. I'm very, very, very excited about that. I can't wait to see it. And you can tell Matt Cardona, he's just got a complete new lease on life with this whole GCW stuff. And hopefully he brings that character to Impact Wrestling, because Matt Cardona, Zack Ryder, Lord knows he needs a character change. He's still Zack Ryder. He's still Zack Ryder from WWE. Nothing's changed. He might have the music change. He might be called Matt Cardona, but he's still Zack Ryder. What we saw in GCW, that's different. That's the different version of Matt Cardona we've been waiting a while for. So hopefully we see that going forward in Impact Wrestling. Lord knows I would be very interested in seeing that. Finally, this past weekend, Impact Wrestling celebrated the anniversary of its first ever show. Impact Wrestling is celebrating its first ever TNA show that took place 19 years ago this past weekend. The event was held at the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama. This is what Impact Wrestling posted over the past weekends. It said, quote, "The first ever TNA show took place 19 years ago today. We are forever grateful for any support you've given us throughout the years, whether you've watched one show or been with us for all 19 years. Thank you." Now, the card featured numerous notable names, including AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, Low Ki, Ken Shamrock, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Hall, Norman Smiley, Buff Bagwell, and others. In the main event of that famous first show, Ken Shamrock defeated Malice with Ricky Steamboat as the special guest referee to win the vacant NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Impact also posted TNA's first anniversary show, NWA TNA Pay-Per-View number 50, in its entirety on YouTube to commemorate the day. So I think that's still up right now. So if you do want to go watch that, I'll put a link to it in the video description below, because it certainly is an interesting event. Features Sting on there as well. So very exciting. Very, very exciting. And look, 19 years ago, talk about a company that's got more lives than a cat. So many times over the years, TNA or Impact Wrestling has been dead, and it's still alive today. And look, over the last few years, there has been a resurgence. Certainly, maybe not in popularity, and I don't think Impact, frankly, will ever reach the peak that it was on Spike TV in the mid-2000s, unless they move back to a network of that exposure. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon, especially considering Anthem owns Access TV, and they've always got that network for the show. Who knows whether it will happen? Who knows if eventually they will move to another network? I would hope so, but time will only tell if that's happened. It's crazy to think that's all of those years ago, and they're still going on strong today. Despite nearly going out of business a million times, they're still going around today, and that means we can still do videos talking about Impact Wrestling here on the channel on YouTube. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of the Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you haven't enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. It really does help us out here on YouTube, got the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching this thing streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.